The blood on Amy Costigan's hands wasn't hers. It belonged to her husband, or what was left of him after the accident that had painted her the villain in a story she never wrote. Now, 3 months later, she stood in the rain outside a mountain gas station at 2 a.m., 3 newborns strapped to her chest in a makeshift carrier, and a black SUV circling the parking lot for the second time. They'd found her again. Hey everyone, and welcome to the channel. You're about to dive into a story that'll have you on the edge of your seat: mystery, danger, unexpected romance, and a woman fighting for her life and her children against an empire that wants her erased. I'm so glad you're here. Drop a comment below and let me know where you're watching from. Are you team read at midnight, or team can't start my day without a story? And if you haven't subscribed yet, please do. Hit that subscribe button because you won't want to miss how this unfolds. Trust me, this one's going to surprise you. Now let's get into it. Amy's breath came in short, visible clouds. The carrier pressed against her ribs, 3 tiny bodies squirming in restless half-sleep. She could feel their warmth through her soaked jacket, the only proof that the last 72 hours weren't a nightmare. Her fingers trembled as she clutched the prepaid phone she'd bought 2 states ago. No contacts. No trace. Just one number memorized in case everything fell apart. It had. The SUV's headlights swept across her face, and Amy turned her back, pretending to wrestle with the ancient gas pump. Her heart slammed against her sternum. The vehicle slowed. Stopped. Not here. Not in front of witnesses. But when she glanced at the cashier inside, he was asleep, head pillowed on his arms. No witnesses. The SUV door opened. Amy didn't think. She grabbed the nozzle, squeezed, and aimed the gasoline spray in a wild arc toward the vehicle. A man's shout cut through the rain. She dropped the nozzle, turned, and ran, not toward her broken-down sedan with its empty tank, but into the woods behind the station. Branches tore at her face. The babies woke, their cries small and sharp, like the mewling of kittens. She pressed a hand over the carrier, murmuring desperately, "Shoo, shoo, please, babies, please." Footsteps crashed through the undergrowth behind her. Amy's boot caught on a root, and she went down hard, twisting her body mid-fall to protect the triplets. Pain exploded through her shoulder as she hit the ground. The babies screamed now, full-throated and terrified. She couldn't run anymore. Couldn't hide. Couldn't even stand. The footsteps stopped 3 feet away. A flashlight beam pinned her like a specimen. Amy threw up an arm to shield her eyes, her other hand cradling the carrier. "Please," she gasped. "They're just babies. They didn't do anything." "I know." The voice was male. Unnervingly gentle. The flashlight lowered. Amy blinked through the rain and darkness, her vision adjusting. The man standing over her wasn't wearing the tailored black suit of her in-laws' security team. He wore jeans, a canvas jacket, and an expression of carefully controlled concern. Not one of them. "You're hurt," he said, as if commenting on the weather. "I'm fine." Amy tried to push herself up and failed, hissing through her teeth. The man crouched, moving slowly, keeping his hands visible. "You're not fine. Your shoulder's dislocated, you're hypothermic, and those babies need to be warm and dry." His gaze flicked past her, toward the gas station. "And whoever was following you just radioed for backup." Amy's stomach dropped. "How do you?" "Because I've been tracking you for 2 days." He said it without malice, without threat. A simple fact. "And because I'm the only reason you made it this far." Her pulse roared in her ears. "Who are you?" "Someone who knows you didn't kill your husband." He extended a hand. "My name is Nick Sullivan. And if you want to keep your children alive, you need to trust me right now." Thunder rumbled overhead, low and ominous. The baby's cries grew weaker, exhausted. Amy stared at the outstretched hand, scarred knuckles, steady fingers, a face that revealed nothing and promised everything. She had no reason to trust him. Every reason to run. But she was so tired of running. "Why?" Her voice cracked. "Why would you help me?" Something flickered in Nick Sullivan's dark eyes. Regret, maybe? Or recognition. "Because 3 years ago, someone helped me when I had nothing left to lose," he said quietly. And because the people hunting you killed more than just your husband. He leaned closer, rain dripping from his dark hair. They killed my sister. What do you think? Can Amy trust this mysterious stranger, or is she walking into an even deadlier trap? Drop your theories in the comments. I love reading what you all think will happen next. Amy's world tilted. The rain. The pain. The impossible choice standing in front of her wearing a stranger's face and carrying the weight of a shared enemy. Behind them, voices echoed from the gas station. Shouts. Orders. Nick's hand remained extended. 10 seconds, he murmured. Then they're here and I can't protect all 4 of you in the open. Amy looked down at the carrier. 3 tiny fists had emerged from the blankets, instinctively reaching for warmth, for safety, for a mother who had nothing left to give but her heartbeat. She'd been running for so long. Maybe it was time to let someone else fight. Amy gripped Nick Sullivan's hand, and he pulled her to her feet in one smooth motion, his other arm steadying her when she swayed. His hand was warm. Solid. My car's a quarter-mile north, he said. Can you walk? I'll crawl if I have to. The corner of his mouth lifted, barely a smile, but enough to make him look almost human. Let's hope it doesn't come to that. He stripped off his jacket and draped it over the carrier, shielding the babies from the worst of the rain. Then, without asking permission, he slipped an arm around Amy's waist and took most of her weight. They moved through the forest like ghosts, Nick navigating the darkness with unnerving precision. He never hesitated. Never stumbled. Who is this man? Behind them, flashlight beams cut through the trees. The movement at 9 o'clock. Nick's grip tightened. Run. Nick's car wasn't a car. It was a Range Rover that looked like it had survived a war, matte black, windows tinted to illegal darkness, and parked beneath a camouflage of pine branches that suggested he'd been watching the gas station long before Amy arrived. He wrenched open the back door, and warmth poured out like a blessing. The interior had been converted into something between a tactical command center and a nursery. Amy's exhausted mind struggled to process the contradiction. A car seat base already installed, blankets folded on the seat, bottles of formula lined up in a cooler. You were expecting me, she whispered. I was expecting you'd need help. Nick guided her into the back seat, his hands impersonal but gentle. Don't read into it. But Amy was already reading into everything. The way he'd positioned the vehicle for a quick exit. The first aid kit mounted within arm's reach. The fact that he'd known she had babies before he ever saw them. He's been watching me. Tracking me. For 2 days, he said. She should be terrified. Instead, she felt the first flicker of something she'd thought her in-laws had killed 3 months ago, hope. Nick slid into the driver's seat and started the engine without turning on the headlights. The Range Rover rolled forward, navigating by moonlight and what seemed like pure instinct. Only when they'd cleared the tree line and hit an access road did he flip on the running lights. In the back seat, Amy fumbled with the carrier straps, her fingers clumsy with cold and shock. The babies had gone quiet, the dangerous kind of quiet that meant they were shutting down. I need to feed them, she said, hating how her voice shook. They haven't eaten in 6 hours. I ran out of formula, and I can't. I'm not producing enough to. There's formula in the cooler. Pre-measured bottles. Nick's eyes found hers in the rearview mirror. Water's already warm. Amy's throat closed. She reached for the cooler with trembling hands, pulled out a bottle, and tested the temperature against her wrist. Perfect. She freed the first baby from the carrier, Lily, the smallest, her daughter whose cry was more of a kitten's mew than a proper wail. The moment the bottle touched Lily's lips, she latched on with desperate hunger. Amy's eyes burned. Thank you. Nick said nothing, but his gaze lingered in the mirror for a moment before returning to the dark road. They drove for an hour through wilderness that grew progressively more remote. Amy fed all 3 babies in rotation, Lily first, then her brothers, James and Thomas. The boys were identical, but she'd learned to tell them apart by touch in the dark days after their birth. James had a small birthmark behind his left ear. Thomas sneezed exactly 3 times when he woke up. Such small details. Such enormous love. She'd been married to Richard Voss for 2 years before she understood what a prison looked like from the inside. He'd been handsome, charming, attentive, right up until the wedding night, when the mask came off and she met the monster underneath. The bruises had been easy to hide. The isolation harder. By the time she realized she was pregnant, Richard had already cut her off from every friend, every family member, every exit route. And then she'd learned she was carrying triplets. Richard's rage had been volcanic. The Voss family wanted an heir, singular. One child to mold, to control, to inherit the empire. 3 children complicated the bloodline, the inheritance, the carefully orchestrated succession. Get rid of 2, Richard had told her, his hand wrapped around her throat. I don't care which ones. Pick your favorite and lose the rest. Amy had started planning her escape that night. But Richard died before she could run. An accident, the police said. His car had gone off a cliff on a mountain road during a storm. Brakes failed. No witnesses. Tragic. Except Richard's family didn't believe in tragedies, only conspiracies. And Amy, the poor nobody he'd married in a moment of rebellion against his aristocratic parents, made the perfect scapegoat. The Black Widow the tabloids called her. Gold digger. Murderer. Black magic practitioner who'd seduced their golden boy and orchestrated his death. Never mind that she'd been 8 months pregnant and on bed rest when Richard died. Never mind that his family had hated her long before his death. Never mind that she'd never wanted his money, his name, or his cursed legacy. The Voss family wanted her babies. Wanted to raise them in Richard's image. Wanted to erase Amy from their lives like she'd never existed. Over her dead body. Which, she suspected, was exactly their plan. The Range Rover finally slowed, turning onto an unmarked gravel road that wound through dense forest. Amy saw water glinting through the trees, a lake, dark and still as glass under the moon. Where are we? She asked. Somewhere they won't find you. Nick killed the engine in front of a cabin that looked like it had grown from the forest itself. Rough timber, stone foundation, windows that reflected nothing. At least not tonight. He came around and opened her door, and Amy realized with a start that she couldn't move. Her body had finally hit its limit. Her legs were numb, her arms locked around the carrier, her shoulders screaming with every breath. Nick assessed her with a single glance. I'm going to carry you inside. Don't fight me. I can walk. You can't. He lifted her, carrier, babies and all, with the ease of someone who'd done this before. Someone trained to extract people from impossible situations. Who are you, Nick Sullivan? The cabin's interior was warmer than it had any right to be. A fire crackled in a stone fireplace, casting golden light across sparse but functional furniture. Someone had prepared this place. Recently. Nick set her down on a leather couch and immediately reached for the carrier. I'll settle them. You need to get out of those wet clothes before you go into shock. Amy's instinct was to refuse, to keep her children close, to trust no one. But Lily chose that moment to whimper, and Nick's entire demeanor shifted. He lifted her from the carrier with shocking gentleness, supporting her head with practiced ease, murmuring something too low for Amy to hear. Lily quieted instantly. You've done this before, Amy said. Nick's jaw tightened. I had a niece. Past tense. The same sister he'd mentioned. The one the Voss family had killed. Amy's chest constricted. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. Be smart. Nick transferred Lily to a portable bassinet that had been set up near the fire. Another preparation, another sign that he'd anticipated everything. There's dry clothes in the bedroom. First door on the right. Medical kit in the bathroom. I'll fix your shoulder after you've changed. It wasn't a suggestion. Amy forced herself to stand, swaying. The world tilted, and Nick was suddenly there, steadying her with a hand on her uninjured arm. I've got you, he said quietly. And God help her, Amy believed him. The bedroom was small, almost monastic. A bed with military corners. A single dresser. Clothes laid out on the mattress, women's clothes, in approximately her size. Jeans. A thermal shirt. Thick socks. Amy's hands shook as she peeled off her soaked jacket, her ruined shirt, her jeans that were stiff with mud and rain. Her reflection in the small mirror above the dresser stopped her cold. She barely recognized herself. The woman staring back had hollow eyes ringed with purple shadows. Cheekbones too sharp. Hair that hadn't been properly washed in a week, scraped back into a knot. A healing cut across her temple from where Richard's mother had thrown a crystal vase at her during the funeral. Monster. Murderer. You killed my son. Amy had stood there and taken it. Taken all of it. The accusations. The threats. The lawyers with their restraining orders and custody petitions. She'd taken it because she had no choice. Because fighting back would only prove what they'd already decided about her. But now, staring at this stranger in the mirror, Amy felt something shift beneath her ribs. Something that had been buried under fear and exhaustion and the weight of keeping 3 tiny humans alive. Rage. Pure, incandescent, cleansing rage. The Voss family had taken everything from her. Her reputation. Her freedom. Her name. They would not take her children. When Amy emerged from the bedroom dressed in clothes that actually fit, Nick was standing by the bassinet with Thomas in his arms, rocking him with unconscious rhythm while simultaneously doing something on a laptop balanced on the arm of a chair. He glanced up, and his expression flickered, too fast for Amy to read. Better? He asked. Warmer. Amy moved to the bassinet where Lily and James slept, tucked under blankets that smelled like cedar and safety. You're good with them. I've had practice. Your niece. Nick's face shuddered. He set Thomas down beside his siblings with infinite care, then closed the laptop. Sit. Your shoulder needs to be reset before the swelling gets worse. Amy sat. Nick pulled a chair in front of her, close enough that their knees almost touched. This close, she could see details she'd missed in the chaos. The scar that cut through his left eyebrow, the calluses on his hands, the way his dark eyes tracked everything in the room even when focused on her. This was not a normal man. This was someone dangerous pretending to be domesticated. This is going to hurt, he said. I'm sorry. I've had worse. Something hard flashed in his eyes. I know. Before Amy could process that, he gripped her arm, braced her shoulder, and pulled. The pain was white-hot and immediate. Amy bit down on her scream, grinding it between her teeth, and then, relief flooded through her as the joint settled back into place. She gasped, sagging forward, and Nick caught her, his hand warm against her back. Breathe, he murmured. Worst part's over. Amy focused on breathing. On the heat of the fire. On the soft sounds of her babies sleeping safe and warm for the first time in days. On the solid presence of the man in front of her who'd appeared out of nowhere like an answer to a prayer she'd been too afraid to speak. Why are you helping me? She whispered. Really? Nick was silent for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then he stood, moved to the fireplace, and stared into the flames. My sister's name was Elena, he said quietly. 3 years ago, she married into the Voss family. A cousin of your husband's. She thought she'd found her fairy tale. His hands curled into fists. 6 months later, she was dead. Suicide, they said. Jumped from a balcony. Amy's blood ran cold. She didn't jump. No. Nick's voice was granite. She didn't. And you've been investigating them since. Every day. He turned to face her, and Amy saw it then. The controlled fury, the calculated patience of someone who'd turned grief into a weapon. I know what they are. I know what they've done. And I know they'll kill you and your children the moment they stop being useful. So what do you want from me? Nick crossed the room, crouched in front of her, and looked her dead in the eyes. I want you to help me destroy them. Nick turned from the window, and for the first time, she saw something like respect in his eyes. There's a family gathering in 5 days. Richard's father's birthday. Every major player will be at the estate. He moved to the table, pulled out a folder, and spread photographs across the surface. Floor plans. Security schedules. Guest list. You're going to walk in there, pay your respects, and plant surveillance devices in 3 locations. Amy's heart hammered. They'll kill me the moment I step through the door. No. They'll play gracious hosts. They'll let you grovel and apologize for the misunderstanding. Nick's smile was cold. Because you're going to offer them exactly what they want. Which is custody of the triplets. The words hit Amy like a physical blow. She shot to her feet, ignoring the pain in her shoulder. Absolutely not. I won't. You'll offer them supervised visitation, Nick continued calmly. You'll apologize for running. You'll blame postpartum depression, grief, fear. You'll play the broken widow begging for mercy. I'm not giving them my children. You're not. You're giving them a performance. Nick caught her shoulders, his grip firm but not painful. Amy, listen to me. They think you're weak. They think you're beaten. We use that. You go in, you cry, you surrender, and while they're celebrating their victory, you bug the estate and get out. And if they don't let me leave? Something dangerous flickered across Nick's face. Then I come in and get you. The certainty in his voice sent a shiver down Amy's spine. This close, she could see gold flecks in his dark eyes. Could smell cedar and gunpowder and something uniquely him. Who are you really? She breathed. You're not just some grieving brother. You're... The window exploded. Nick slammed into Amy, taking her down to the floor as gunfire tore through the cabin. Glass rained over them. The bassinet. The babies. Amy screamed. Nick was already moving. He grabbed the bassinet with one hand, shielding it with his body, and dragged it behind the couch. Bullets punched through the walls, splintering wood, shattering the laptop. Amy crawled to the bassinet, covering her children with her body. They were crying now, terrified wails that tore at her heart. Nick had produced a gun from somewhere, a sleek black weapon that looked military-grade. He fired twice through the shattered window without looking, then grabbed Amy's arm. Basement. Now. There's a basement? He hauled her to her feet, thrust the bassinet into her arms, and pushed her toward what looked like a solid wall. His hand found a hidden latch, and a section of the wall swung inward, revealing stairs descending into darkness. Go! Amy didn't argue. She ran down the stairs, the bassinet clutched to her chest, her babies screaming. Behind her, gunfire continued in controlled bursts. Nick was covering their retreat, buying them seconds. The basement was concrete and steel, a safe room. Amy stumbled into the center, spinning back toward the stairs. Nick appeared at the top, fired 3 more shots, then slammed the hidden door shut. He flew down the stairs, locked a heavy bolt, and immediately moved to a panel on the wall. They found us, Amy gasped. How did they? Doesn't matter. Nick's fingers flew over the panel, pulling up security feeds. The screens showed at least 6 figures in tactical gear surrounding the cabin. Professional. Military-grade equipment. They're not here to arrest you. They're here to kill me. Us. Nick ejected his weapons magazine, checked it, slammed it back in. They're here to kill both of us. Which means someone knows I'm not who I claim to be. An explosion rocked the cabin above them. Dust rained from the ceiling. Amy clutched her babies, her mind blank with terror. We're trapped. We're protected. This room can withstand a direct missile strike. Nick pulled out a phone, military-grade, encrypted. But we can't stay here. They'll burn us out or wait us out. Then what? Then I call for extraction. He met her eyes, and Amy saw the truth he'd been hiding. You're a federal agent, she whispered. Intelligence officer. And this just became an active operation. Nick's jaw tightened. I'm sorry, Amy. I never meant to put you and your children in the line of fire. But you used us as bait. Yes. At least he didn't lie. Another explosion. Closer. The babies screamed louder, and Amy felt her composure fracturing. Nick made his call, speaking in terse military shorthand. When he hung up, his expression was grim. Extraction team is 20 minutes out. We don't have 20 minutes. I know. Nick moved to what looked like a gun safe, opened it, and began pulling out equipment. Which means we're going on offense. He looked at Amy, and she saw the soldier beneath the civilian mask. Can you shoot? Amy thought about Richard's family. About the bullets tearing through the cabin meant for her babies. About being hunted like an animal for crimes she didn't commit. Teach me, she said. Nick smiled. A real smile, fierce and approving. That's my girl. And despite everything, despite the terror and chaos and gunfire, Amy felt heat bloom in her chest at those words. His girl. God help her. Nick turned from the window, and for the first time, she saw something like respect in his eyes. There's a family gathering in 5 days. Richard's father's birthday. Every major player will be at the estate. He moved to the table, pulled out a folder, and spread photographs across the surface. Floor plans. Security schedules. Guest list. You're going to walk in there, pay your respects, and plant surveillance devices in 3 locations. Amy's heart hammered. They'll kill me the moment I step through the door. No. They'll play gracious hosts. They'll let you grovel and apologize for the misunderstanding. Nick's smile was cold. Because you're going to offer them exactly what they want. Which is custody of the triplets. The words hit Amy like a physical blow. She shot to her feet, ignoring the pain in her shoulder. Absolutely not. I won't. You'll offer them supervised visitation, Nick continued calmly. You'll apologize for running. You'll blame postpartum depression, grief, fear. You'll play the broken widow begging for mercy. I'm not giving them my children. You're not. You're giving them a performance. Nick caught her shoulders, his grip firm but not painful. Amy, listen to me. They think you're weak. They think you're beaten. We use that. You go in, you cry, you surrender, and while they're celebrating their victory, you bug the estate and get out. And if they don't let me leave? Something dangerous flickered across Nick's face. Then I come in and get you. The certainty in his voice sent a shiver down Amy's spine. This close, she could see gold flecks in his dark eyes. Could smell cedar and gunpowder and something uniquely him. Who are you really? She breathed. You're not just some grieving brother. You're... The window exploded. Nick slammed into Amy, taking her down to the floor as gunfire tore through the cabin. Glass rained over them. The bassinet. The babies. Amy screamed. Nick was already moving. He grabbed the bassinet with one hand, shielding it with his body, and dragged it behind the couch. Bullets punched through the walls, splintering wood, shattering the laptop. Amy crawled to the bassinet, covering her children with her body. They were crying now, terrified wails that tore at her heart. Nick had produced a gun from somewhere, a sleek black weapon that looked military-grade. He fired twice through the shattered window without looking, then grabbed Amy's arm. Basement. Now. There's a basement? He hauled her to her feet, thrust the bassinet into her arms, and pushed her toward what looked like a solid wall. His hand found a hidden latch, and a section of the wall swung inward, revealing stairs descending into darkness. Go! Amy didn't argue. She ran down the stairs, the bassinet clutched to her chest, her babies screaming. Behind her, gunfire continued in controlled bursts. Nick was covering their retreat, buying them seconds. The basement was concrete and steel, a safe room. Amy stumbled into the center, spinning back toward the stairs. Nick appeared at the top, fired 3 more shots, then slammed the hidden door shut. He flew down the stairs, locked a heavy bolt, and immediately moved to a panel on the wall. They found us, Amy gasped. How did they? Doesn't matter. Nick's fingers flew over the panel, pulling up security feeds. The screens showed at least 6 figures in tactical gear surrounding the cabin. Professional. Military-grade equipment. They're not here to arrest you. They're here to kill me. Us. Nick ejected his weapons magazine, checked it, slammed it back in. They're here to kill both of us. Which means someone knows I'm not who I claim to be. An explosion rocked the cabin above them. Dust rained from the ceiling. Amy clutched her babies, her mind blank with terror. We're trapped. We're protected. This room can withstand a direct missile strike. Nick pulled out a phone, military-grade, encrypted. But we can't stay here. They'll burn us out or wait us out. Then what? Then I call for extraction. He met her eyes, and Amy saw the truth he'd been hiding. You're a federal agent, she whispered. Intelligence officer. And this just became an active operation. Nick's jaw tightened. I'm sorry, Amy. I never meant to put you and your children in the line of fire. But you used us as bait. Yes. At least he didn't lie. Another explosion. Closer. The babies screamed louder, and Amy felt her composure fracturing. Nick made his call, speaking in terse military shorthand. When he hung up, his expression was grim. "Extraction team is 20 minutes out." "We don't have 20 minutes. "I know." Nick moved to what looked like a gun safe, opened it, and began pulling out equipment. "Which means we're going on offense." He looked at Amy, and she saw the soldier beneath the civilian mask. "Can you shoot?" Amy thought about Richard's family. About the bullets tearing through the cabin meant for her babies. About being hunted like an animal for crimes she didn't commit. "Teach me," she said. Nick smiled, a real smile, fierce and approving. "That's my girl." And despite everything, despite the terror and chaos and gunfire, Amy felt heat bloom in her chest at those words. His girl. God help her. Nick handed Amy a Glock 19, smaller than his weapon but still lethal. "Safety's here. Point and squeeze. Don't pull the trigger, squeeze it. Aim center mass. Don't hesitate." His hands moved over hers, adjusting her grip with impersonal efficiency that somehow felt intimate. "If someone comes through that door who isn't me, you shoot first and ask questions never." "Understood." Amy's hands shook, but she nodded. "Understood." "Good." Nick pulled a vest from the safe, body armor, tactical grade. He helped her into it, his fingers quick and professional as he tightened the straps around her frame. "This will stop most calibers. But don't test it." "Comforting." His eyes flicked to hers, dark with something that might have been humor in another life. "I'm not in the business of comfort. I'm in the business of keeping you alive." Another explosion rattled the foundation. The lights flickered. Nick cursed under his breath and moved to the security panel. The screens showed the tactical team setting charges at multiple entry points. Professional extraction. They were going to breach simultaneously, overwhelming any defense. "How many safe houses do you have?" Amy asked, her voice steadier than she felt. 4 in this region. They'll have found them all by now." "How?" "Someone in my chain of command is compromised." Nick's expression was carved from stone. "Someone with access to my operational parameters. My locations. My mission profile." "Your mission to protect me." "My mission to bring down the Voss family using any means necessary." He glanced at her, and something vulnerable flickered across his face. "Protecting you was supposed to be incidental. Extract the widow, debrief her, use her testimony to build the case." But you were 8 months pregnant and starving when I found you. Living in a motel room that rented by the hour, working under a fake name at a truck stop, trying to save enough money to disappear." His voice roughened. "You were already running, already fighting. You didn't need saving. You needed backup." Amy's throat tightened. She remembered that motel. Remembered the peeling wallpaper and the sounds through the thin walls and the constant terror that Richard's family would find her before she could give birth somewhere safe. She'd checked into a free clinic under a false name when her contractions started. Had delivered 3 babies with only a tired nurse practitioner and a prayer. Had walked out 8 hours later because she couldn't afford to stay and couldn't risk the paperwork. "You were there," she realized suddenly. "At the clinic. There was a man in the waiting room who paid my bill. That wasn't charity. That was operational funds." But Nick wouldn't meet her eyes. "You've been protecting me for 3 months. I've been monitoring a valuable witness." "Bullshit." Amy stepped closer, the gun still in her hands, her babies crying behind her, bullets waiting above. "You care. You're not supposed to, but you do." Nick's jaw clenched. "Don't confuse gratitude with..." The door at the top of the stairs exploded inward. Nick moved like liquid violence. He fired 4 shots in rapid succession, and Amy heard bodies hit the floor. But more were coming. Boots on the stairs, shouts, tactical coordination. "Get in the corner." Nick barked. "Cover the babies." Amy didn't argue. She dragged the bassinet into the corner, positioned herself in front of it, and raised the Glock with shaking hands. The first man through the door wore full tactical gear, assault rifle raised. Nick dropped him with 2 shots to the chest. The second came in low and fast, and Nick met him hand to hand, disarming him in a brutal sequence that ended with a broken neck. A third shooter appeared at the doorway. Amy fired. The recoil jolted through her arms, the sound deafening in the enclosed space. Her shot went wide, punching into the wall, but it made the shooter duck. Nick used the distraction to put a bullet through his throat. Good. Nick shouted over the ringing in her ears. Again if you have to. But the assault had stopped. Silence fell, broken only by the baby's terrified crying and the ringing aftermath of gunfire. Nick moved to the stairs, checked the bodies, then peered up into the cabin. His shoulders tensed. They're pulling back. Why? Amy's hands were still shaking, adrenaline screaming through her veins. Because they're not here to martyr themselves. They're reassessing. Nick pulled a radio off one of the dead men, listened to the chatter. His expression darkened. They're waiting for reinforcements. And they've got a helicopter inbound. How long? 10 minutes. Nick checked his watch. Extraction team is still 12 minutes out. They were going to die here. Amy and her babies and this strange, dangerous man who'd broken every rule to protect her. She hadn't survived Richard. Hadn't survived childbirth in a free clinic. Hadn't survived 3 months on the run just to die in a basement. What's the terrain outside? She asked. Nick's eyes snapped to her. Forest. Lake to the east. Road to the south. Can we make it to the lake? With 3 infants and a hostile kill team between us and the water? Nick shook his head. It's a suicide run. As opposed to staying here? He smiled again, that fierce expression that made him look almost feral. I'm starting to like the way you think. They moved fast. Nick rigged the remaining ammunition into an improvised explosive, set on a timer. This will buy us 3 minutes. Maybe 4. Amy had transferred the babies into a tactical carrier Nick produced from the safe room, military grade, designed to protect and stabilize. All 3 infants were strapped against her chest, bundled tight, their cries muffled by the insulated fabric. It hurt her injured shoulder, but she'd live. Hopefully. Nick handed her a radio. You run. I'll cover. You get to the lake, there's a boathouse on the north shore. Inside is a kayak with a false bottom. You hide there until extraction arrives. What about you? I'll be right behind you. Nick. He gripped her face between his hands and Amy's breath caught. This close, she could see the gold flecks in his dark eyes, the scar through his eyebrow, the intensity that burned beneath his controlled exterior. I have kept people alive in worse situations than this, he said quietly. Trust me. I don't even know you. Yes, you do. His thumb brushed her cheekbone, and heat sparked beneath her skin despite the fear, despite everything. You've known me since the moment I pulled you out of those woods. You recognized me the same way I recognized you. And what's that? A survivor. Nick's eyes searched hers. Someone who refuses to quit. Someone who'll burn the world down before they let the monsters win. Amy's heart hammered against her ribs. The babies. The danger. The impossible man in front of her who looked at her like she was brave instead of broken. If we survive this, she started. When we survive this, Nick corrected, you're going to help me destroy the people who tried to make you a victim. And then we're going to figure out what this is. This. He kissed her. It was brief, fierce, desperate, a collision more than a caress. His mouth was warm and certain, tasting like gunpowder and promise, and for one heartbeat Amy forgot how to be afraid. Then he pulled back, grabbed his rifle, and moved to the stairs. 30 seconds. Then run like hell. The world exploded into chaos. Nick's improvised bomb detonated with a concussive force that shook the entire structure. Amy heard screaming from above, shouts of confusion, the roar of flames. Go! Nick was suddenly beside her, hauling her up the stairs and through the smoke-filled cabin. Fire consumed the front half of the structure. Bodies littered the floor, some from Nick's defense, some from the explosion. Cold night air hit Amy's face like a slap. Nick's hand was iron around her wrist, pulling her into the forest. Behind them, gunfire erupted as the remaining kill team realized their targets were escaping. Amy ran. Branches tore at her clothes. The carrier bounced against her chest, and she wrapped both arms around it, protecting her babies with her body. Her lungs burned. Her shoulders screamed. Bullets chewed through the trees around them. Nick returned fire without breaking stride, moving with the fluid efficiency of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. He'd positioned himself between Amy and the shooters, using his body as a shield. "Don't stop," he shouted. "I've got you." The lake appeared through the trees, dark water reflecting moonlight. Amy's boots hit sand and she nearly fell. Nick caught her, kept her upright, pushed her forward. "Boathouse. North Shore. 50 yards. Amy saw it, a ramshackle structure on stilts, half collapsed into the water. 20 yards. A bullet caught Nick. He went down hard and Amy screamed. She skidded to a stop, turning back, but Nick was already pushing himself up, blood spreading across his left thigh. "Don't you dare," he snarled. "Get to the boathouse." "Not without you." "Amy." She grabbed his arm, hauled him up with strength born of pure desperation, and half-dragged him toward the boathouse. He was heavy, favoring his wounded leg, but he kept moving. They crashed through the rotting door together. Inside was exactly what Nick had promised: a kayak, emergency supplies, and a hiding space beneath the false bottom just large enough for Amy and the babies. "Get in," Nick ordered, already moving to the door with his rifle. "I'll hold them off until extraction." "We both hide," Amy said. "We both survive. There's not enough room. Then we make room." Amy was already pulling open the false bottom, settling the carrier inside. "Getting. That's an order." Despite everything, the pain, the blood, the approaching footsteps, Nick laughed. "You're giving me orders now? You said we're partners." Amy met his eyes, fierce and unwavering. "So act like it." "Get in." For a long moment, they stared at each other. Then Nick nodded, climbed into the cramped space beside her, and pulled the false bottom closed above them. Darkness enveloped them. Nick's body was pressed against hers, the babies between them, his blood warm and wet against her side. His breathing was controlled despite the pain. "You're insane," he whispered in the dark. "I learned from the best," Amy whispered back. His hand found hers, their fingers interlacing. Above them, footsteps entered the boathouse. Flashlight beams swept the interior. Amy held her breath, held her babies, held onto the man who'd risked everything to save her, and prayed they'd live to see sunrise. The tactical team searched the boathouse for 7 minutes. 7 minutes of Amy barely breathing, her hand pressed over the babies' mouths to muffle their whimpers, Nick's body rigid beside her in the cramped darkness. 7 minutes of boots creaking on the wooden floor above them, flashlight beams cutting through the cracks in the false bottom, voices discussing whether to burn the structure or move on. Then, miraculously, the radio crackled with new orders. Primary targets lost in the forest. Regroup at Rally Point Delta. Helicopters aborting due to local police response. We're blown. Extract now. The footsteps retreated. Silence fell. Nick waited another 3 minutes before pushing open the false bottom. He moved slowly, painfully, his wounded leg leaving a smear of blood on the kayak. But his gun was steady as he cleared the boathouse, checking every corner, every shadow. "Clear," he finally said. "For now." Amy climbed out, her muscles screaming from the cramped position, and immediately checked the babies. All 3 were alive, alert, miraculously unharmed. Lily's tiny fist had wrapped around Amy's finger, holding on with surprising strength. "We're alive," Amy thought, dazed. "We actually survived." "Let me see your leg," she said, turning to Nick. "It's a graze." "Let me see it." Nick sat heavily on an overturned crate, and Amy knelt beside him, pulling out the medical kit from the emergency supplies. The wound was more than a graze. The bullet had carved a furrow through his outer thigh, deep enough to require stitches. "This is going to hurt," Amy said, echoing his words from earlier. "I've had worse." But his jaw was tight as she cleaned the wound, his knuckles white where he gripped the crate. Amy worked quickly, efficiently. She'd learned field medicine during her marriage, not by choice. Richard's rages had sent her to the emergency room 3 times before she got smart and learned to treat injuries herself. Bruises could be explained. Broken bones raised questions. You're good at this, Nick observed through gritted teeth. Practice. Amy's voice was flat as she began stitching. My husband didn't like witnesses to his temper. Nick's hand shot out, catching her wrist. When she looked up, his eyes were black with controlled fury. He hurt you, Nick said. Not a question. He owned me. In his mind, at least. Amy returned to stitching. The first time he hit me was on our honeymoon. I'd smiled at a waiter. Richard said I was embarrassing him, making him look weak. Amy. It got worse when I got pregnant. He said the babies made me ugly. That I'd trapped him. Her hands were steady even as her voice shook. He threatened to push me down the stairs. Said it would look like an accident. Said no one would question it because pregnant women are clumsy. Nick's entire body had gone rigid. How many times? Does it matter? Yes. Amy tied off the final stitch. Enough times that I stopped counting. Enough times that I started planning his death. The confession hung between them like smoke. Nick's eyes searched hers. Did you kill him? Amy had been waiting for this question. Had expected it from the moment Nick told her Richard's brake line had been cut. No, she said quietly. But I wanted to. God help me, I fantasized about it. I researched untraceable poisons. I thought about cutting his brake lines myself. She met Nick's gaze without flinching. I was going to do it the week after the babies were born. But someone beat me to it. His own family. Apparently. Amy stood, putting distance between them, between the intimacy of the confession and the man who now knew her darkest thoughts. So what does that make me? Am I better than them because I only thought about murder? Or am I just as guilty because I wanted him dead? It makes you human, Nick said. And it makes Richard a monster who got exactly what he deserved. The law doesn't see it that way. I'm not the law. Nick pushed himself upright, testing his injured leg. I'm something else entirely. Something in his tone made Amy turn. What does that mean? The tactical team searched the boathouse for 7 minutes. 7 minutes of Amy barely breathing, her hand pressed over the babies' mouths to muffle their whimpers, Nick's body rigid beside her in the cramped darkness. 7 minutes of boots creaking on the wooden floor above them, flashlight beams cutting through the cracks in the false bottom, voices discussing whether to burn the structure or move on. Then, miraculously, the radio crackled with new orders. Primary targets lost in the forest. Regroup at Rally Point Delta. Helicopters aborting due to local police response. We're blown. Extract now. The footsteps retreated. Silence fell. Nick waited another 3 minutes before pushing open the false bottom. He moved slowly, painfully, his wounded leg leaving a smear of blood on the kayak. But his gun was steady as he cleared the boathouse, checking every corner, every shadow. Clear, he finally said. For now. Amy climbed out, her muscles screaming from the cramped position, and immediately checked the babies. All 3 were alive, alert, miraculously unharmed. Lily's tiny fist had wrapped around Amy's finger, holding on with surprising strength. We're alive, Amy thought, dazed. We actually survived. Let me see your leg, she said, turning to Nick. It's a graze. Let me see it. Nick sat heavily on an overturned crate, and Amy knelt beside him, pulling out the medical kit from the emergency supplies. The wound was more than a graze. The bullet had carved a furrow through his outer thigh, deep enough to require stitches. This is going to hurt, Amy said, echoing his words from earlier. I've had worse. But his jaw was tight as she cleaned the wound, his knuckles white where he gripped the crate. Amy worked quickly, efficiently. She'd learned field medicine during her marriage, not by choice. Richard's rages had sent her to the emergency room 3 times before she got smart and learned to treat injuries herself. Bruises could be explained. Broken bones raised questions. You're good at this, Nick observed through gritted teeth. Practice. Amy's voice was flat as she began stitching. My husband didn't like witnesses to his temper. Nick's hand shot out, catching her wrist. When she looked up, his eyes were black with controlled fury. He hurt you, Nick said. Not a question. He owned me. In his mind, at least. Amy returned to stitching. The first time he hit me was on our honeymoon. I'd smiled at a waiter. Richard said I was embarrassing him, making him look weak. Amy. It got worse when I got pregnant. He said the babies made me ugly. That I'd trapped him. Her hands were steady even as her voice shook. He threatened to push me down the stairs. Said it would look like an accident. Said no one would question it because pregnant women are clumsy. Nick's entire body had gone rigid. How many times? Does it matter? Yes. Amy tied off the final stitch. Enough times that I stopped counting. Enough times that I started planning his death. The confession hung between them like smoke. Nick's eyes searched hers. Did you kill him? Amy had been waiting for this question. Had expected it from the moment Nick told her Richard's brake line had been cut. No, she said quietly. But I wanted to. God help me, I fantasized about it. I researched untraceable poisons. I thought about cutting his brake lines myself. She met Nick's gaze without flinching. I was going to do it the week after the babies were born. But someone beat me to it. His own family. Apparently. Amy stood, putting distance between them, between the intimacy of the confession and the man who now knew her darkest thoughts. So what does that make me? Am I better than them because I only thought about murder? Or am I just as guilty because I wanted him dead? It makes you human, Nick said. And it makes Richard a monster who got exactly what he deserved. The law doesn't see it that way. I'm not the law. Nick pushed himself upright, testing his injured leg. I'm something else entirely. Something in his tone made Amy turn. What does that mean? The extraction team, she said suddenly. You said they were 12 minutes out. Where are they? Cole checked his watch, then his phone. His expression darkened. They should be here by now. Unless they're not coming. They're coming. I paid them too much to. Helicopter blades cut through the night air. But the sound was coming from the wrong direction. Cole's phone buzzed with an incoming message. He looked at the screen and his face went white. What? Amy demanded. He turned the phone toward her. The message was a photograph. It showed Cole's extraction team, 4 bodies lined up on the ground, each with a single bullet wound to the head. Below the image, a single line of text. We have what we came for. Your move, Mr. Mercer. Amy's blood turned to ice. They know who you are. They've always known. Cole's voice was hollow. This entire thing, the smear campaign, the murder attempts, everything, it was never about killing you. It was about drawing me out. I don't understand. The Voss family didn't just kill my sister. They knew who she was to me. They knew I'd come for revenge. Cole looked at Amy, and she saw devastation in his eyes. You weren't the bait, Amy. You were the trap. And I walked right into it. The helicopter was getting closer. We have to run, Amy said. There's nowhere to run. Cole moved to the window, peered out at the approaching aircraft. They'll have thermal imaging. Backup teams. We're on an open lake with 1 exit point and 3 infants who can't move quietly. Then what do we do? Cole was silent for a long moment. Then he pulled off his tactical vest, removed a small device from the lining and handed it to Amy. This is a panic button. 1 press, and it sends a distress signal to my secondary team. They're 2 hours away, but they'll come. 2 hours is too long. For me, not for you. Cole began strapping his vest onto Amy, over the baby carrier. You're going to take the kayak. Paddle north along the shoreline. There's a summer camp 3 miles up, abandoned this time of year. Hide there until my team arrives. Amy's heart stopped. What about you? I'm going to give you a head start. Cole checked his weapon, his expression calm despite the approaching death. I'm going to hold them off as long as I can. No. Amy grabbed his arm. No, you're coming with me. I can't paddle with this leg. I'll slow you down and they'll catch all of us. Cole cupped her face, his touch gentle despite the urgency. Amy, listen to me. Your children need you. They need you alive to tell the world what was done to them, to stop it from happening to others. I won't leave you. You have to. Cole kissed her again, deeper this time, desperate and tender and final. When he pulled back, his eyes were bright. I've been dead for 3 years, Amy. But you made me remember what it felt like to be alive. To have something worth protecting. Tears streamed down Amy's face. Cole. Go. He pushed her toward the kayak, his jaw set. Go and don't look back. Promise me. I can't. Promise me. The helicopter was directly overhead now, searchlights sweeping the lake. Amy looked at Cole, at this impossible man who'd saved her, protected her, kissed her like she was precious instead of broken. I promise, she whispered. And then she ran. She dragged the kayak into the water, settled the babies in the waterproof compartment Cole had prepared, and began paddling with everything she had. Behind her, gunfire erupted. Amy didn't look back. She'd promised. But with every stroke of the paddle, every beat of her heart, she swore a different oath. I will survive. I will protect my children. And I will come back for you. The Voss family had made a mistake. They taught Amy Costigan how to be a widow. Now she was going to teach them what it meant to create a survivor. Amy paddled until her arms went numb. The gunfire behind her had stopped 10 minutes ago, either because Cole had run out of ammunition or because he'd run out of time. She didn't let herself think about which. Couldn't afford to. The moment she stopped moving, stopped fighting, the Voss family won. And Amy Costigan was done losing. The summer camp materialized from the darkness like a ghost town. Cabins with sagging porches, a dock collapsed into the water, a main lodge with boarded windows. Amy dragged the kayak onto the shore and pulled out the bassinet, her muscles screaming. The babies were crying again. Hungry, cold, terrified. Just like their mother. Amy found shelter in what had been the camp director's office. A small building with a wood stove and enough intact roof to provide cover. She got a fire going using supplies from the kayak's emergency kit, then fed the babies with the last of the formula. Her hands shook as she held the bottles. Cole's blood was still on her clothes. His kiss still burned on her lips. His final words echoed in her mind. You made me remember what it felt like to be alive. Past tense. As if he'd already accepted his death. Amy's vision blurred with tears she couldn't afford to shed. She finished feeding Thomas, burped him mechanically, and settled all 3 babies in a makeshift bed near the fire. Then she pulled out the panic button Cole had given her. 1 press. 1 distress signal. 2 hours until rescue. Amy pressed it. Now came the hardest part, waiting. She must have dozed, because she jerked awake to the sound of footsteps on the porch. Amy's hand flew to the Glock, her heart hammering. Too soon for Cole's team. Which meant the door crashed open. A man stepped inside, backlit by moonlight. Expensive suit despite the late hour. Silver hair perfectly styled. Amy recognized him from the funeral. Victor Voss. Richard's uncle. The man who'd cut Richard's brake lines. Hello, daughter-in-law, Victor said pleasantly, as if they'd met for tea instead of a manhunt. You've led us on quite a chase. Amy raised the gun with both hands. Stay back. Or what? You'll shoot me? Victor smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. We both know you won't. You're not a killer, Amy. That's what makes you so disappointingly predictable. I'm full of surprises. Are you? Victor stepped fully into the cabin, and Amy saw he wasn't alone. 2 men flanked him, professional security, armed and ready. Then surprise me. Pull that trigger. Become the monster we always said you were. Amy's finger tightened on the trigger. But Victor was already moving toward the bassinet. Don't touch them. Amy's voice cracked. These children belong to our family, Victor said, crouching beside the sleeping triplets. They carry Voss blood. Voss potential. We invested millions in their creation. Did your precious Cole tell you that? Did he explain what your babies really are? They're my children. They're the future. Victor lifted Lily with shocking gentleness, and Amy's world narrowed to that single point of contact. The first generation of genetically optimized humans. Perfect intelligence. Perfect health. Perfect obedience, once we activate the behavioral modifications. Amy's blood turned to ice. Behavioral modifications? Triggered by a specific chemical compound. Completely harmless until activated, then. Victor smiled. Then they become exactly what we designed them to be. Loyal. Controllable. Weapons disguised as heirs. You're insane. I'm visionary. Victor stood, still holding Lily. Your husband understood that, eventually. Why do you think he agreed to the genetic program? Why do you think he married a nobody like you in the first place? The words hit like physical blows. Richard chose you because you were disposable, Victor continued, his voice almost kind. No family to ask questions. No resources to fight back. The perfect incubator for our experiment. And when you served your purpose, you'd simply disappear. But Richard changed his mind, Amy said, her voice hollow. He was going to testify. Richard got sentimental. Started viewing you as a person instead of a vessel. Started imagining a life outside the family. Victor's expression hardened. He forgot that there is no outside. There is only the family and those who threaten it. So you killed him. I removed a liability. Victor moved toward the door, Lily still cradled in his arms. Just as I'm about to remove another one. Amy's heart stopped. What did you do to Cole? Cole Mercer died 3 years ago in a plane crash, remember? Victor's smile was razor-sharp. Though I must admit, his performance as Nicholas Sullivan was impressive. He almost convinced us he was just another broken man looking for redemption. But we've known his identity for months. Every move he made, every safe house, every plan, we allowed it. Controlled it. Why? Because killing a dead billionaire raises questions. But a dead intelligence officer who died protecting a witness. Victor shrugged. That's just a tragedy. Especially when his body is found alongside the woman he was trying to save. The implication crashed over Amy like ice water. They were going to kill her here. Frame it as a murder-suicide. Cole dies a hero, Amy dies a victim, and the Voss family takes custody of 3 children no one knows are genetically modified weapons. Perfect crime. Perfect cover-up. You won't get away with this, Amy said. We already have. Victor nodded to his security team. Gentlemen, make it clean. And make sure it looks like... Lily sneezed. 3 times in rapid succession. Victor frowned, looking down at the baby in his arms. What? Then Lily smiled. It was Thomas who sneezed 3 times when he woke up. Not Lily. Which meant the baby Victor was holding wasn't Lily. Understanding hit Amy like lightning. She'd switched the babies in the dark. Put Thomas in Lily's pink blanket. Put Lily in Thomas's blue one. A mother's instinct to protect through misdirection. And if the babies had been modified with behavioral triggers, if their genetics had been altered, what else had been changed? Thomas sneezed again in Victor's arms, and this time Amy saw it. A faint shimmer in the baby's eyes. A flash of something not quite human. Probably was a trap. But Amy was out of options. She checked her children one last time, all breathing, all safe, all impossibly perfect and terrifyingly unknown, and started walking. Toward rescue or execution. She'd find out which soon enough. Rally Point Charlie was an abandoned fire watchtower 2 miles through dense forest. Amy climbed the rusted stairs with her babies strapped to her chest, every muscle screaming, every instinct warning her this was a mistake. The door at the top was open, golden light spilling into the darkness. She stepped inside and saw Cole. He was alive, battered, bleeding from a gash across his temple, his injured leg bandaged with what looked like a torn shirt, but alive. He sat at a makeshift communications station, laptop open, satellite phone to his ear. When he saw Amy, he went perfectly still. "I'll call you back," he said into the phone, and ended the call. For a heartbeat, they just stared at each other. Then Amy crossed the space between them and hit him. Across the chest with her free hand. "You said you'd hold them off." Her voice broke. "You said, I thought you were dead." "I know." Cole caught her wrist gently. "I'm sorry. I had to make them think I was." "What?" Cole pulled her down onto the bench beside him, his hands steady on her back. "The boathouse assault was a diversion. I let them think they had me cornered, then triggered an incendiary device and escaped through an underwater exit. They found a body," he grimaced. "One of their own men I'd killed earlier. burned beyond recognition. They think I'm dead. Which means they'll stop hunting you and focus entirely on you. Cole's eyes searched hers. Amy, what happened at the camp? My sensors picked up an explosion. Thomas happened. Amy looked down at her sleeping babies. Cole, they're not just genetically modified. I don't even know what they are. Thomas screamed and Victor collapsed. The windows shattered. And then, the building exploded. Cole's expression was grim. Sonic weaponization. I suspected it, but I didn't want to believe it. You suspected? The Voss family's research division has been experimenting with genetic acoustic modification for 3 years. Theoretically, it would create humans capable of producing sound waves at frequencies that could incapacitate, disorient, or kill. Cole's hands curled into fists. I've been trying to shut down their labs, but they're scattered across multiple countries. And I never had proof they'd actually succeeded. Until now. Amy's voice was hollow. My babies are weapons. Your babies are children who were experimented on without consent. Cole tilted her chin up, forcing her to meet his eyes. They're victims, Amy. Just like you. Just like Elena. And we're going to make sure the people who did this pay. How? The Voss family has unlimited resources, political connections, and now they know who you are. They know Cole Mercer is dead. They don't know he's still operational. A fierce smile crossed Cole's face. Victor made a mistake tonight. He confirmed everything I've been investigating. The genetic program. The behavioral modifications. The weaponization. But we don't have proof. We have the best proof possible. Cole gestured to the babies. We have 3 living, breathing examples of crimes against humanity. And I recorded every word Victor said. Amy's breath caught. How? Cole tapped the baby carrier Amy was wearing. I embedded a recording device in the tactical vest. Everything Victor confessed, the experiments, Richard's murder, the conspiracy, it's all documented. Hope flared in Amy's chest for the first time in hours. That's enough to arrest him. It's enough to destroy the entire family. Cole turned his laptop toward her. The screen showed a network map, dozens of names, companies, research facilities, all connected to the Voss empire. I've spent 3 years building this case. I have financial records, witness statements, evidence of 12 murders including Elena's. But I needed the missing piece. The proof of what they were really doing. The genetic program. You and your children are that proof. Cole's hand found hers, squeezed. Amy, I know this is terrifying. I know you never asked for any of this. But you're the key to ending it. To saving countless other children from being turned into experiments. Amy looked at her babies, Lily, James, Thomas. 3 perfect faces, 3 innocent lives, 3 tiny humans who'd been violated before they even took their first breath. She thought about Richard, about how he'd changed his mind, how he'd tried to save them. She thought about Elena, about the 7 murdered witnesses. About every victim the Voss family had created in their quest for power. And she thought about the woman she'd been a year ago, broken, terrified, convinced she was powerless. That woman was gone. In her place stood someone who'd survived hell, given birth in a free clinic, run for her life across 3 states, and stared down armed killers to protect her children. That woman was done being a victim. What do we need to do? Amy asked. Cole's eyes blazed with approval and something deeper. Something that made her heart race despite everything. Victor's birthday gala is tomorrow night. Every major player in the Voss organization will be there. It's their annual gathering, business deals, money laundering disguised as charity donations, the works. Cole pulled up security footage of the estate. My original plan was to infiltrate, gather evidence, and disappear. But now we have something better. Which is, we have you. The grieving widow returning to beg forgiveness. Wanting to negotiate custody. Willing to do anything to protect her children. Cole's smile was sharp as broken glass. They'll let you in because they think they've won. They think I'm dead, you're desperate, and your babies are already theirs. And once I'm inside? You're going to stand in front of every corrupt politician, every dirty judge, every complicit business partner they have, and you're going to tell them exactly what the Voss family did to you and your children. Cole's hand tightened on hers, while I broadcast it live to every media outlet in the country. Amy's pulse raced. They'll kill me. They'll try. Cole stood, pulled her to her feet, and cupped her face in his hands. But they're going to fail. Because I'll be there. My team will be there. And by the time we're done, the Voss family will be in federal custody and their empire will be ashes. You're asking me to walk into a death trap. I'm asking you to fight back. Cole's thumb brushed her cheekbone. I'm asking you to be the warrior I know you are. The woman who kayaked 3 miles with 3 babies. The woman who switched her children's blankets to protect them. The woman who survived everything the Voss family threw at her. Amy looked up at this impossible man who'd given up his entire life to avenge his sister. Who'd protected Amy when he should have used her. Who'd kissed her like she was precious instead of broken. If we do this, she whispered, there's no going back. No, Cole agreed. There's only forward. Together. Together, Amy echoed. And when Cole kissed her this time, it wasn't desperate or final. It was a promise. A declaration. A beginning instead of an ending. When they finally pulled apart, Amy saw her own determination reflected in his eyes. Let's burn their empire to the ground, she said. Cole smiled. That's my girl. They spent the rest of the night planning. Cole had resources Amy couldn't have imagined. Safe houses, security teams, technology that looked like it belonged in a spy movie. But more than that, he had belief. In justice. In her. In the possibility that sometimes the monsters didn't win. As dawn broke over the forest, Amy fed her babies and watched Cole coordinate with his team. He moved with quiet confidence, a man who'd turned grief into purpose and pain into power. He caught her watching and smiled, real and warm and alive. Ready to end this? He asked. Amy looked at her children. At the man who'd saved them. At the future they were about to fight for. I was born ready, she said, and meant it. The Voss estate looked like something from a fairy tale, sprawling gardens lit by thousands of lights, classical music drifting through the evening air, guests in designer gowns and tailored tuxedos sipping champagne worth more than Amy's old car. Amy stood at the gates in a black dress Cole had provided, her hair styled, her makeup perfect, her babies strapped to her chest in a designer carrier that hid the recording equipment and body armor underneath. She looked like a widow coming to beg. She was a soldier going to war. You're clear, Cole's voice came through the nearly invisible earpiece. I'm in position. My team has eyes on every exit. The moment you give the signal, we move. Amy touched her earpiece once, the agreed-upon acknowledgement, and stepped forward. The security guard at the gate looked her up and down, consulted his tablet, then spoke into his radio. After a long moment, he nodded. Mrs. Voss. We've been expecting you. I bet you have, Amy thought. She was escorted through gardens that had once felt like a prison, past fountains where Richard had proposed, under arches where she'd promised to love and honor a man who'd seen her as property. But that woman was gone. The Amy Costigan who walked into the grand ballroom was someone new. Someone forged in fire and desperation and the fierce love of a mother who'd do anything to protect her children. The room fell silent when she entered. 200 faces turned toward her. Politicians. CEOs. Judges. Society's elite, gathered to celebrate Victor Voss's 70th birthday and launder money through charitable donations. And there, at the center of it all, stood Victor himself. He looked surprised for exactly 1 second. Then his expression smoothed into practiced sympathy. Amy, he said, crossing the ballroom with open arms. My dear girl. We'd heard you were indisposed. What a relief to see you well. The lie was so smooth, so believable, that if Amy hadn't known better, she might have believed he actually cared. Hello, Victor. Amy's voice carried across the silent room. I've come to talk about my children. Of course, family is everything. Victor gestured to the crowd. Though perhaps we should discuss this privately. No. Amy stepped forward, and she felt the weight of 200 gazes. I think everyone here should know what the Voss family has been doing. What you've all been supporting. Victor's smile never wavered, but his eyes went cold. Amy, you're clearly distressed. Grief can make us say things we don't mean. I mean every word. Amy's hand moved to the carrier, and she pressed the hidden button that activated the recording device. Tell me, Victor, how much did you invest in the genetic modification program? The one that turned my babies into weapons. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Victor's face hardened. You're hysterical. Am I? Amy pulled out a tablet, provided by Cole, loaded with evidence. She tossed it to the nearest guest, a congressman she recognized from news coverage. That tablet contains financial records of illegal genetic research. Human experimentation. The murder of 7 witnesses who threatened to expose it. The congressman's face went white as he scrolled through the files. It also contains footage of Victor Voss confessing to murdering his own nephew. Amy continued, her voice steady despite her racing heart. Richard Voss didn't die in an accident. His uncle cut his brake lines because Richard was going to testify against the family. This is absurd. Victor snapped. Guards. Escort Mrs. Voss out. The guards aren't coming, Cole's voice said. And then he was there. Cole Mercer stepped out of the shadows at the edge of the ballroom, very much alive, flanked by a team of federal agents wearing FBI vests. The crowd erupted into chaos, shocked whispers, people reaching for phones, others trying to slip toward the exits. They found those exits blocked by more agents. Cole Mercer, Victor breathed, and for the first time, Amy saw genuine fear in his eyes. You're supposed to be dead. Cole smiled as he crossed the ballroom toward Amy. So are a lot of people you've killed. But unlike them, I had resources, money, and 3 years of patience. He reached Amy's side, his hand finding the small of her back, and she felt strength flow into her. Ladies and gentlemen, Cole addressed the room, his voice carrying the authority of someone used to commanding billions. My name is Cole Mercer. 3 years ago, I faked my death to investigate the Voss family for the murder of my sister, Federal Marshal Elena Mercer. What I discovered was far worse than a single killing. He nodded to his team. Screens descended from the ceiling, displaying documents, photographs, video footage. The Voss family has been running an illegal genetic modification program for over a decade, Cole continued. They've been experimenting on unwitting subjects, including Amy Costigan and her children. They've murdered witnesses, bribed officials, and built an empire on crimes against humanity. The screens showed it all. The research facilities, the financial records, the list of victims, and then the recording from the camp. Victor's voice, crystal clear. These children belong to our family. They carry Voss blood. Voss potential. We invested millions in their creation. The first generation of genetically optimized humans. Perfect intelligence. Perfect health. Perfect obedience, once we activate the behavioral modifications. The ballroom erupted into chaos. Guests were shouting, demanding answers. Some tried to run. Others pulled out phones, already calling lawyers. But Victor was staring at Amy with pure hatred. You stupid little girl, he hissed. You think this ends it? You think exposing us destroys us? We have connections you can't imagine. Lawyers who'll bury this evidence. Judges in our pocket? Had, Cole corrected. You had those things. But as of 6 minutes ago, federal warrants were issued for every person in this room. And this entire conversation has been broadcast live to 47 media outlets worldwide. Victor's face went gray. What? Amy smiled, fierce and victorious. Smile for the camera, Victor. The whole world is watching. She pointed to the small device pinned to her dress. A camera. Broadcasting everything. The Voss family's birthday gala had just become their public execution. The arrests took 3 hours. Federal agents swarmed the estate, taking people into custody, seizing records, shutting down the empire piece by piece. Amy watched from a safe distance, her babies finally sleeping peacefully in her arms, Cole beside her. It's really over, she whispered. The arrests are just beginning. Cole's arm wrapped around her shoulders. The trials will take years. Some will make deals, some will fight. But yes, the empire is broken. They can't hurt you anymore. Amy looked up at him. We did it. You did it. Cole turned to face her fully, his hand cupping her cheek. You walked into that room knowing they might kill you. You stood in front of 200 of the most powerful people in the state and told the truth. That wasn't me, Amy. That was all you. You gave me the courage. No. I gave you the tools. You already had the courage. His eyes searched hers. You've had it all along. Amy's throat tightened with emotion. What happens now? Now. Cole smiled. Now we testify. We make sure every person responsible sees justice. We shut down every research facility, free every victim, and burn this program to the ground. And after, Cole's voice softened. After you get to live. Really live. You and your children. No more running. No more fear. No more looking over your shoulder. What about you? Amy asked quietly. Cole Mercer is alive now. Public. Your cover is blown. Good. Cole's smile turned genuine. I'm tired of being dead. I'm tired of living in the shadows, chasing ghosts, sacrificing everything for revenge. What do you want instead? He looked at her, really looked at her, and Amy saw the answer in his eyes before he spoke it. I want to live too, he said. With someone who understands what it means to survive. Someone who's brave enough to fight monsters. Someone who makes me remember what it feels like to hope. Amy's heart stuttered. Cole. I'm not asking for promises, he said quickly. I know this is complicated. I know you need time to heal, to figure out who you are outside of survival mode. I'm just saying. He took a breath. I'm saying I'll be here. When you're ready. If you're ready. Amy looked at this man who'd given up everything to save her. Who'd protected her children like they were his own. Who'd looked at her brokenness and seen strength. She thought about the future. About trials and testimony and rebuilding her life from ashes. She thought about doing it alone versus doing it with someone who understood. I'm not ready for promises either, she said softly. But I'm ready for possibility. Cole's smile could have lit the darkness. Possibility I can work with. He kissed her then, gentle and sweet and full of hope instead of desperation. And for the first time in longer than Amy could remember, she felt safe. Not because someone was protecting her. Because she'd learned to protect herself. Across the lawn, federal agents led Victor Voss toward a waiting vehicle. He looked smaller somehow. Diminished. Just a man instead of a monster. He caught Amy's eyes as he passed, and she saw the moment he realized he'd lost. Not just the empire. Not just his freedom. But the narrative. History wouldn't remember Victor Voss as a visionary or a patriarch. They'd remember him as the monster who experimented on children. And they'd remember Amy Costigan as the mother who brought him down. Amy lifted her chin, met his gaze without flinching and smiled. Victor looked away first. 6 months later. The lakeside cabin looked different in summer. Wildflowers dotted the meadow where Amy had once run for her life. The boathouse had been rebuilt, painted a cheerful blue. The dock stretched into water that sparkled like diamonds under the afternoon sun. Amy sat on that dock, her feet dangling in the cool water, watching her children play in a portable playpen Cole had set up in the shade. They were 6 months older now, sitting up, laughing, reaching for everything with curious hands. Normal, perfect babies. Dr. Sarah Peterson, the geneticist Cole had hired to examine the triplets, had spent 3 months running every test imaginable. Her conclusion had brought Amy to tears of relief. The modifications were real, but dormant. Triggered only by extreme stress and the specific chemical compound Victor had mentioned. Without that compound, now destroyed along with all the research, Lily, James, and Thomas would live completely normal lives. They'd never be weapons. They'd just be children. The other victims of the Voss genetic program hadn't been so lucky. 17 children had been identified, scattered across multiple countries, all subjected to different experimental protocols. Cole had personally funded their medical care, their therapy, their families' legal battles. Justice was expensive. But Cole Mercer had always believed some things were worth any price. You're thinking too hard again, Cole's voice said behind her. Amy smiled without turning. How can you tell? You get this little crease right here. His finger touched the space between her eyebrows as he sat beside her, his legs dangling next to hers in the water. I've learned to read it. That's your worrying about things you can't control face. There's a lot to worry about. The trials are going well. Victor's facing 73 counts. His lawyers are already negotiating a plea deal. Cole's hand found hers, their fingers interlacing with comfortable familiarity. The research facilities have been shut down. The victims are getting care. And you testified so brilliantly that 3 more families have come forward with evidence. Amy leaned her head against his shoulder. Elena would be proud of what you did. What we did. Cole pressed a kiss to her hair. I spent 3 years building a case. You're the one who had the courage to blow it wide open. Courage or desperation? Both. The best kind of bravery usually is. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the babies play. Thomas was chewing on a stuffed elephant. James was trying to grab Lily's toy, and Lily was having none of it, her indignant squeal making both adults laugh. So normal. So perfect. So impossibly precious. I got the final divorce papers today, Amy said quietly. Officially, I'm no longer Amy Voss. Going back to Costigan? Actually, Amy pulled out a document she'd been carrying in her pocket all day. I'm thinking of something new. A fresh start. No connection to Richard or his family. Cole took the paper, scanned it, and his expression softened. Amy Blake. From your mother's maiden name? She died when I was 12, but she taught me what strength looked like. How to survive things that should break you. Amy's voice caught. I want to honor that. Be someone she'd be proud of. She would be. God, Amy, she would be so proud. Cole set down the paper and cupped her face in his hands. You've built a life from nothing. You're enrolled in graduate school again, you've got a book deal to tell your story, you're helping other victims of domestic violence find resources and support. You're the one who set all that up. I made some calls. You did the work. His thumb brushed her cheekbone. You've become exactly who you were always meant to be. Before Richard. Before the Voss family. Just unbroken and unstoppable. Amy's eyes burned with happy tears. I'm not unbroken. I have scars. We all do. Cole's smile turned rueful. I spent 3 years so focused on revenge I forgot how to be human. You reminded me. You and these 3 ridiculous, perfect babies. As if on cue, Thomas spit up on his elephant and started crying. Amy laughed, a real laugh, full and genuine, and moved to comfort him. Cole was already there, scooping up the baby with practiced ease, making silly faces until Thomas's cries turned to giggles. Watching them together, Amy felt her heart expand with something she'd thought she'd never feel again, peace. Not the absence of struggle. Not the end of challenges. But the deep, bone-deep certainty that whatever came next, she could handle it. She wasn't alone anymore. That evening, after the babies were asleep in the nursery Cole had built in the cabin's second bedroom, Amy found him on the porch watching the sunset paint the lake in shades of gold and crimson. Beautiful, she said, settling beside him. Yeah. But Cole was looking at her, not the sunset. Amy's cheeks warmed. 6 months, and he could still make her blush with a look. I've been thinking, Cole said carefully, about the future. About what comes after the trials and the testimony and all of it. Amy's pulse quickened. And I bought a house. In the city. Near the university where you'll be studying. He pulled out his phone, showed her pictures of a beautiful brownstone with a garden. 5 bedrooms. 1 for you, 1 for each of the babies, 1 for a home office, and 1 for whoever might need it. Cole. I'm not asking you to move in with me, he said quickly. I'm offering you a place to live. Rent-free. Secure. With a built-in babysitter who happens to be very good at 3 a.m. feedings. Amy's throat tightened. That's too much. It's not enough. It'll never be enough. Cole turned to face her fully. Amy, I fell in love with you somewhere between the gas station and the boathouse. I fell in love with your courage, your fierce mama bear protectiveness, Your refusal to quit even when quitting was the logical choice. Her breath caught. I'm not asking for promises, Cole continued, echoing his words from 6 months ago. I'm not asking you to love me back. I know you're still healing. I know you need time. I'm just asking for possibility. For the chance to be part of your life. Your children's lives. To build something real and lasting and good. Amy looked at this impossible man who'd saved her, protected her, and then stepped back to let her save herself. Who'd given up billions to avenge his sister and used those same billions to help strangers. Who'd looked at her brokenness and seen strength. You said you fell in love somewhere between the gas station and the boathouse, she said softly. Yes. For me, it was when you switched the baby's blankets without me asking. When you just knew what I needed and gave it to me without making me beg. Amy took his hand, brought it to her lips. I'm not healed, Cole. I'm still figuring out who I am outside of survival mode. I still have nightmares. I still flinch at loud noises. I know. But I'm also ready to stop being afraid. She met his eyes. I'm ready to try. To build something. To see what possibility looks like when we're both brave enough to reach for it. Cole's smile was sunrise and sunset and every beautiful thing between. Yeah. Amy leaned forward and kissed him, soft and sweet and full of promise. Let's go home. To the brownstone? To wherever we are. Together. Amy pulled back, her hand on his cheek. That's what home means now. Not a place. Just this. Cole kissed her again, deeper this time, and Amy felt the last piece of her shattered heart click into place. Not fixed. Not the same as before. But whole in a new way. Stronger for having been broken and rebuilt. 1 year later. Amy Blake stood in front of a courthouse, cameras flashing, microphones thrust forward, reporters shouting questions. Beside her stood Cole Mercer, his hand warm and steady in hers. Mrs. Blake, how do you feel about Victor Voss's life sentence? Amy smiled. I feel like justice was served. Not just for me and my children, but for every victim of the Voss family's crimes. For Elena Mercer. For Richard, who tried to do the right thing in the end. For the 17 children who were experimented on. What's next for you? I'm finishing my master's degree in social work. I'm continuing my advocacy for domestic violence survivors. And I'm raising 3 beautiful children who'll grow up knowing they can be anything they want to be, not what someone else designed them to be. And your relationship with Cole Mercer? Amy glanced at Cole, who squeezed her hand. We're taking it one day at a time, she said. Building something real. Something lasting. Something neither of us thought we'd find. Any plans for marriage? Cole laughed. Ask me again in 6 months. But his eyes said yes. Said forever. Said I choose you every day for the rest of my life. And Amy's heart said the same thing back. That night, after the babies were asleep and the news cycle had moved on, Amy and Cole sat in the garden of their brownstone, sharing a bottle of wine under the stars. Thank you, Amy said quietly. For what? For seeing me. The real me. Not the victim or the widow or the broken woman. Just me. Cole pulled her close, kissed her temple. Thank you for letting me be seen too. For giving me a reason to come back to life. We saved each other. No. Cole smiled. We gave each other permission to save ourselves. That's better. Amy rested her head on his shoulder and looked up at the stars, the same stars that had watched her run for her life, fight for her children, and finally find her way home. The Black Widow, they'd called her. But she'd never been that. She'd been a survivor. A warrior. A mother. A woman who refused to let monsters define her story. And now she was just Amy Blake. Free. And that was the greatest victory of all. The end. What an incredible journey. If this story moved you, drop a comment and let me know your favorite moment. Was it the romance? The action? Amy's transformation? I love hearing from you all. And if you enjoyed this story, there are plenty more coming. Make sure you're subscribed so you never miss one.